Hey, but it's Jimmie Allen here from After Hours on 1620 The Zone. We don't have a show tonight, and with Creighton game being on, so I thought I'd take this time to just make a quick podcast, get my thoughts on the Dylan Raiola situation. Obviously, the former Nebraska quarterback decides to commit to Oregon, and everybody's kind of, I don't know about throwing him under the bus or talking about the fit or trying to understand why and wondering how much of an effort there was made from Nebraska's end to keep Dylan around. And I mean, I think just reading the tea leaves with what Coach Rule had to say about how much he cared about Dylan and really wanted Dylan to be here versus Dylan unfollowing the coaching staff on social media and everything that went along with that. That I don't want to say it wasn't acclimable, but there's clearly some sort of divide between the two. And I think you really got to think back to before Dylan committed to Nebraska and what the conversation was like from the Raiola camp, whether it be his father, whether it be his uncle, whether it be Dylan himself, about what's next for Dylan after college. Where he chose to go to college, that was never about where he chose to go to college. That was about who could get him to the NFL and where he was the best fit, and probably to some degree where he could start at right away. When you look back at the Ohio State commitment and the Georgia commitment and take all the high school stuff out of it, obviously he went to four different high schools in 4 different years. But I want to talk about the premise of what Dylan Raiola was expected to be when he walked on campus, wherever it was, whether it be Athens, whether it be Columbus, or whether it obviously ended up being Lincoln, was to project Dylan to the next round of his life, being the NFL and a potential number one overall, or at least a first round draft pick. And I don't think anybody with an unbiased opinion can look at the way it was going in Lincoln and say he was for sure going to be not even just a first round draft pick, but an NFL guy. And I think his arm talent and stature would have got him there on merit alone. But was Nebraska doing enough to project Dylan to the next round? Was Dylan doing enough to project Nebraska to the level that would it take to get a first round quarterback to the NFL? I think the answer to all those things is no, which is fine, and all that can be true. It can be a little bit on the coaching staff and the development side. It can be a little bit on the Dylan Raiola side. And now, obviously, he chose to go to Oregon and chose to leave Nebraska. And everybody out there that was talking about his inability to commit to a high school is probably saying, "See, I told you so. I told you he'd be gone." But I want you to think about the way Dylan's season ended and the fact that he did break his lower leg and what next year is going to look like for him. Now, if Dante Moore comes back to Eugene, obviously Dylan is going to be the backup option for Dan Lanning's team. I don't know if that's the worst thing for Dylan Raiola specifically, and here's why. Think about a leg break and how long it takes to come back from that. We've seen players come back rather quickly. Obviously, modern medicine's a little bit different. But what if Dylan Raiola can't play next year? And what if that injury is a little bit more severe than we had thought? When you want to go somewhere with a brand like Oregon, with a bank account like Oregon, and have the ability to get a little bit of money, get that bag, as they say, as you're waiting for your next stop and your next opportunity. Because from what Dylan Raiola has put on paper and on film up until this point, is not good enough to get him to the NFL, and not good enough to get him a high round draft pick specifically. So, what does year three look like if you can't play? Yeah, you could have stayed at Nebraska and you could have made a pretty big chunk of money, or you could have went somewhere else where if you're gonna sit out anyway, not hinder Nebraska. And I'm not trying to allude to the fact that there's collusion or Nebraska this is a play by Nebraska to get Dylan off the books or anything like that. But from a Dylan Raiola standpoint, it makes sense too. Why not go somewhere else if you can't play for a year? Sit out, see if you do fit in to a national championship contender. See if you do fit into a team that has gotten plenty of guys to the NFL in the first round. Who's going to get another one if Dante Moore decides to come out this year? And I don't think he will. I think he's going to come back to Oregon, and Dylan Raiola will be the backup or even maybe the third guy if the injuries is bad, as I'm alluding to it. And it just kind of feels like Dylan Raiola slash the Raiola camp might be playing 3D chess here, where you go to a school that's going to pay you a bunch of money to be on the bench or to be the starter. They're going to pay you either way. They've got Phil Knight Nike money, and obviously Eugene's had a big check for a long time. But you don't have to deliver to get that check, as to the point where in Lincoln, yeah, you're going to get the money anyway. There's such scrutiny that comes with it, and you were projected to be the guy that you could build the program around. Fast forward to what's going on in Oregon. There's a guy that's there. There's already a projected first round player at your position, while you could sit and heal and find out if Dan Lanning does need his quarterback to be mobile, or if Dylan Raiola can fit into that system seamlessly and they can maybe morph it a little bit to Dylan's strengths. And I mean, the best coaches morph their system to the talent that they have. And Dan Lanning is definitely one of the best coaches in the country. But if Dylan Raiola if I'm Dylan Raiola and I know that my ability is limited next year because of my leg break, or I want to give myself another year to heal up, why would I stay in Lincoln? Why wouldn't I go to Oregon? Why wouldn't I take the most money available out there to sit on the bench when I can heal up for a year, get myself mentally and physically ready with another year in a strength conditioning program, another year just sitting back and watching a high level system like Oregon has with the coaching staff that Oregon has, and then make my decision after that. There's no reason that Dylan Raiola can't go to another school after the 2026 season. And if I had to put my money on it, I'd say that's exactly what's going to happen. Now, the market wasn't great for Dylan Raiola when he decided to jump into the transfer portal this season. And with another year out, what would that market look like? And the age old saying is, how can I miss you if you don't go away? And I think the highlights for Dylan Raiola will outlast the lowlights. And listen, everybody's more excited when a 5-star quarterback comes to town, whether it be, a Dante Moore level guy or a guy along the lines of a Makai Nelson, who obviously has gone from USC to Boise State to UTEP and is back in the transfer portal again. And there's a lot of buzz around a guy like that who, just because of who he was coming out of high school, is going to get probably a pretty good chunk of money despite playing at UTEP last year, not really making it work at Boise State, and certainly not making it work on the West Coast. But there always will be that garner for a guy that had 5 stars next to his name when he came out of high school, no matter what position he played, and especially if he's a quarterback. So I really think that Dylan Raiola is maybe making the smartest move for him. If he were my son, or if I was Dylan Raiola, I would love for him to sit out another year after he had his leg break situation, and be able to heal and get back to football form before you take on the role of being the starting quarterback at another Power Four school, excuse me, and especially in the situation that he was at in Lincoln. Like, think back to how many times you had a 5-star left tackle or a 5-star wide receiver, like David Sanders Jr. or Ryan Wingo, came in with Dylan Raiola because he was considered to be the pillar of this program, and who Matt Rule and this offensive staff, and probably to some degree Dana Holgerson, were going to try to build things around. And why wouldn't you, right? I mean, it sells itself. You have the kid with the golden arm that can throw a football through a basketball hoop from 40 yards out at the spring game. You put that on display while he's in shorts and a t-shirt, and it should sell itself. Now, obviously, Nebraska came up short with those prospects that I just mentioned. There's a lot of reasons why, but I think with a guy like Jeep Wade and the coaching staffs, the guys that they specifically brought in from a recruiting standpoint on the offensive and defensive side of the line is actually paying dividends more than having that 5-star quarterback to caveat the guys that you're trying to attract. But with that being said, like, back to Dylan Raiola for a second, it makes a lot more sense because, specifically because the injury. Take it the first 2 years, well, year and a half out of the equation of what he did in Lincoln, and just specifically with his leg break. Why rush it back if you don't have to? And if the end goal has been from day one, which, go back to listen to when his father spoke, go back to listen when his uncle spoke, go back and listen when Matt Rule spoke and just talked about the potential of a first round draft pick. It makes the most sense for him to sit and heal if the end goal is just to get to the NFL anyway. And listen, anybody that comes out of high school with 5 stars next to their name, that's the trajectory and that's the projection. That's where they want to be in the first place. So for me, I think Oregon, and listen, I know anybody that listens to After Hours heard me say, I think this is a horrible fit. It's a square peg, round hole from a Dylan Raiola playing in Dan Lanning's systems spot. I still believe that. I think that's absolutely true. But from a Dylan Raiola, I don't have to play and I still get paid and I can sit and learn and go somewhere else the year after it and still get a big bag of NIL money and probably end up using that to leverage the next deal too, which, listen, hate college sports all you want for that reason, for the NIL era, but that's the way business works. And it's all about what leverage you have and how you can control that next contract. And for a guy that grew up in a house with an NFL football player as a father, he probably understands that better than most. So I really think this move to Eugene for Dylan is more about what's after the 2026 season. And look at, and the best point of reference for that is his high school career. I mean, when things didn't pan out or it wasn't the best option for him, Dylan moved states. I mean, from Texas to Arizona to Georgia, and then obviously the flipping of the commitments of college. This is the way of the world of college athletics now, where it's more about what's next than what's now. And I know all of us that love hearing the band play and the tunnel walk and everything that's special about college football hate to hear that. But the toothpaste is out of the tube and you're not putting it back in. So for my money, if I'm Dylan Raiola, I think Oregon is actually the perfect fit, specifically from a financial standpoint. And specifically from a leverage standpoint, I mean, if you can be a 5-star quarterback that played at Nebraska and got a year and a half of starting, and you got to sit behind a potential number one overall type quarterback for 1 year, and you get all that tutelage of what Oregon's system and a winning program like that is, and you can roll that all into a package and ask for more money in year 4, it just makes too much sense. And that's the play for me. I will be surprised if Dylan Raiola ever plays a game in Eugene, Oregon as an Oregon Ducks quarterback. I'll be even more surprised if he's not on to school number 3 in his 4th year. And I think it's the best option for him. I mean, loyalty's dead in college athletics, and this is the way of the world now. So that's my thoughts on it. I had a bunch of people reach out to me, and I knew we weren't going to be on the air tonight, so I wanted to take a minute and make a quick podcast about it. If you haven't checked out After Hours yet, we're on 6 to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday when the sports schedule allows on 1620 The Zone. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on 1620 The Zone.